Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here, and it is Monday night at literally midnight right now. I was hanging out on the Discord with some of the guys. By the way, shout out to the Discord. And then A4 leaked. The entire set was data mined and then began being posted on various Discord servers. And the people in the Discord server, again, link down in the description below, were kind enough to basically download all of the card images and then send them to me for a set review, which is what we're going to be doing right now. I did not expect this to happen. This is going to be quite a long video. And again, it's the middle of the night, so this video is going to be uploaded at a very random time. And I do apologize, but later, tomorrow on Tuesday, we're going to be going into do deck lists, which is going to be really fun. But anyway, here it is, the full A4 set review. Before I ever expected to do this, but anyway, that's the YouTube game. Sometimes you just got to go ahead and do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Shout out to the Discord and shout out to everybody that helped make this video happen. This is going to be a long one. I'm just going to say this is a long video. Set reviews are very long. Anyway, yeah, there it is. Let's get right into it. The first card here, Oddish. Poison Powder, 10 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned, 50 HP. There's going to be a lot of filler in the set, so a lot of these cards I really don't have much to say about this, to be fair. Tangela, 80 HP basic, 2 energy, Sleep Powder, 20. And your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. One thing that I'm actually going to do before we do any of this is actually look at the trainer cards first, and I think that this is a smart idea. The reason for that is that the trainer cards give us a lot of context as to how good a lot of these new cards are going to be. So anyway, let's go ahead and straight up take a look at the trainer cards first. Elemental Switch, we've seen this card before. Move a Fire, Water, or a Lightning Energy from one of your bench Pokemon to your active. This is a very, very good card. We've talked about it a lot in previous videos. Here is a new item card that you guys definitely have not seen before. This is Squirt Bottle. So the reason why Squirt Bottle, I believe, exists is kind of to counter Charizard. I think Charizard was one of the most dominant Pokemon over the last few expansions. Squirt Bottle, discard a Fire Energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Quite simply. So very, very strong, and it is going to be basically a direct counter to Charizard. Now, I don't know if many people will be playing this particular card. Like, you know, like, yes, Charizard's popular, but it's not like the craziest deck in the entire game. I do think it's really funny that Squirt Bottle exists to, I guess, counteract fire Pokemon. Yes, there is Ho-Oh and there's other fire type Pokemon, but to be fair, it's not like fire decks were like completely dominant in the format. If this was discard a Psychic Energy, I feel like that would even make more sense because Giratina is so popular. But Squirt Bottle is hilarious. Yes, this does technically nerf Charizard, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's just hilarious that they printed Squirt Bottle. One of my favorite arts of all time, by the way. Really, really funny. Next up are some new tool cards. This one is Steel Apron. The metal Pokemon this card is attached to takes 10 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. And it recovers from all special conditions, and it cannot be affected by special conditions. So you're immune to statuses if you are a Steel Pokemon wearing Steel Apron, and then you take 10 less damage from attacks. So in theory, this is a decent card, but I don't think it's that crazy. Typically, it's better to heal, like something like a Leftovers or a Giant Cape is technically better than Steel Apron most of the time. But this is a very decent card, and I think it will see play perhaps in various metal type decks or steel type decks. We'll take a look at those Pokemon later. This next tool card is absolutely insane, guys. This is Dark Pendant. Okay, let's just read this here. If the dark Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, your opponent reveals a random card from their hand and shuffles it into their deck. Okay. So again, we were going crazy in the Discord about this. I'm bringing up the microphone because I don't want to talk too loud. We're in the middle of the night. The people in the Discord were talking about this card because it really is crazy. And the main reason why I think this card is crazy, and again, Umbreon came out, we have Darkrai in the format, but the main Pokemon that I think Dark Pendant is going to be really good on is Guzzlord. And this isn't the only card that's going to buff Guzzlord in the set. That's a spoiler here. We can attach this to Guzzlord, and no, we're not also just discarding energies when we attack, right, with Guzzlord's attack. But now if our opponent attacks us, then we're removing a card from their hand at the same time. Guzzlord is a dark basic Pokemon that is kind of a control, like, you know, a disruptive Pokemon in its own right, but has a ton of HP. And most of the time, Guzzlord is taking at least 2 to 3 attacks to get KO'd. So Dark Pendant is going to be really, really good against Guzzlord. I think this card, or with Guzzlord, I think this card is absolutely broken. In fact, it's just going to make really any dark type deck much better. This effect is extraordinarily strong. It does not discard the card from their hand, but it shuffles it back into their deck. That is still strong enough, to be fair. This card is absolutely insane, and I think it will see play in a control Guzzlord deck, which we'll talk about later in this video. Dark Pendant is one of the most influential tool cards I think we will have in the game right now, and is buffing the dark type tremendously. This is a very, 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 very strong card. We've already talked about Rescue Scarf, so 3 different tool cards coming in the set, which is pretty cool. But like I said, we've already talked about Rescue Scarf. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack, your opponent by your opponent's Pokemon, put that Pokemon back into your hand instead of the discard pile. We talked about it in, I guess, earlier today's video. It's not a bad card. It will see play in various niche scenarios. I do like it. Okay. Will. So we have some supporter cards. We actually have quite a few supporter cards, which were not showcased before. This is Will. This is the card that I think a lot of people have been, I guess, waiting for in Pokemon Pocket. And this card is crazy. This is a supporter. It reads, the next time you flip any number of coins for the effect of an attack, ability, or trainer card after using this card on this turn, the first coin flip will definitely be heads. It's funny that it says definitely and not always. Like, it's weird wording. But basically, this is a supporter card that during your turn, the turn that you play, Will, the next coin you flip for anything in Pokemon Pocket will be heads. And I think there's a lot of applications for Will, but this is the other card that I think is indirectly buffing Guzzlord. So basically we can play Will, and then when we attack with Guzzlord, we're guaranteed to discard at least 1 energy, and then we're, again, a 50% chance to discard a second energy. But we can pair Will with Team Rocket Grunt, with Dark Pendant, with Guzzlord, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. And I also think Will is going to be decent for a variety of other Pokemon in the game. The OG Marowak from Genetic Apex is what's really interesting to me. Will guarantee that Marowak does 80 damage, and then we have a 50% chance, basically, to do 160, I think is how that'll work. Maybe not. Maybe. Is that how it'll work? I don't even know, right? Does 80? Yeah. I think you flip 2 coins. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I was like in my own head for a minute. It'll be really good for Marowak, and then I also think like a Alolan Executor is another funny one, which does 150 on a coin flip. So this will guarantee that we do 150 with the Alolan Executor. This card is really funny. I think some people will overblow Will. I do think it's going to be exceptionally strong in a lot of different decks, but I don't think it's going to make a lot of coin flip decks immediately meta. I think there's a lot of scenarios similar to Dawn-based decks in previous formats. There's going to be a lot of times when you're playing a deck and you just don't have the supporter that you need. So Will isn't always going to be in your hand, so it's not a very consistent card. But in, again, strategies like Marowak or like Guzzlord, which again aren't terrible cards, even if we aren't flipping all of the heads, I think that Will is going to be really, really strong in those particular scenarios. A lot of people are going to be excited about this card. There's a ton of Pokemon. There's literally dozens and dozens of Pokemon that flip coins when they attack, and Will is going to indirectly make a lot of those Pokemon stronger. And this is really, really interesting and really, really funny. I'm curious, honestly, to see where Will comes into play. This works for abilities. So the old Hypno, the Genetic Apex Hypno, which puts your opponent's Pokemon to sleep with a coin flip, could be interesting. There's also some Paralysis Pokemon. Paralysis is a big one. A lot of the Pokemon that paralyze flip a coin to do that paralysis, right? That's sort of the main thing that, that's the main way that paralysis works, because, if you paralyze your opponent's Pokemon, they're guaranteed to be paralyzed next turn. So that's why the coin flip is for the effect to even land. So Will is going to guarantee paralysis for all those Pokemon, and I think that's going to be definitely really, really strong as well. So many scenarios for Will. This card is crazy. We have to move on. Lyra, we've already talked about. Switch one of your active Pokemon that has damage onto it with one of your bench Pokemon. This is going to be really, really relevant. I think Dragonite was the #1 example here, but it will see play in a variety of different scenarios as well. And then Silver, we've already talked about Silver. Actually, in my video earlier, I kind of downplayed this card, and people just sort of told me that I was wrong in the comments, and I honestly kind of agree with you. Your opponent reveals their hand, which is kind of the big part about this card, and then you choose a supporter card that you find there, and then you shuffle it into their deck. So I think that control decks, especially like Guzzlord, are going to be a lot more relevant in this format, and I think Silver is going to fit very well. Anything that is already, sort of annoying to deal with, having to deal with Silver is also going to be annoying, but this is also a really good supporter that Silvally decks can play, as just to satisfy the condition while also having some disrupt effect. I think that Silver is going to be better than, I don't know if it'll be better than Mars, but it's definitely going to provide more value in the early game than Mars. So, in certain control decks, I could see people playing Silver and Mars or Silver and Red card, and that definitely could be really strong. I think the effect here that it does actually reveal your opponent's hand is actually as strong of an effect as we can kind of, have in Pokemon Pocket. So I kind of underplayed Silver originally. It's really hot in my office, so I'm sweating right now, by the way. Silver is going to be really good. I kind of downplayed it earlier, but this is a good card. Next up is Fisher. Okay, so this supporter here, I believe, was kind of meant specifically for the new Gyarados card, which we talked about in a previous video. We'll cover it again. Flip 3 coins. For each heads, a water Pokemon is chosen at random from your discard pile and put into your hand. Again, this is kind of directly meant to be played with Gyarados, which discards water Pokemon to deal more damage. There will be some scenarios where Fisher's good in the future, I suspect, but this is a very specific effect that isn't necessarily super relevant for Pokemon that aren't Gyarados, but we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, there is Fisher. By the way, Will is not going to work with other supporter cards. I just wanted to put that out there. Oh, sorry. Okay, we got ahead of ourselves. Will isn't going to work with other supporter cards because it's only during the turn you play Will, and you can only play one supporter card in your turn. I just wanted to mention that. Okay. Anyway, moving on to Jasmine. During your opponent's next turn, all of your Steelix and Skarmory EX, so yes, Skarmory EX is in the set, take 50 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. I will just say right now, the Steelix isn't that impressive, and Skarmory is interesting, but minus 50 is a lot of damage. Like, that's a very tanky effect here for Jasmine. And what's interesting is that we already have Adamant, right? So Adamant works for all metal-type Pokemon, so you could play a deck with Jasmine and Adamant, and with the new Steel Tool card, and be very, very tanky. I think we have, these cards have buffed the Steel type archetypes pretty considerably, but I don't know if effects like this are going to be that strong. It really does depend. Minus 50 is a lot. Like, that's a big difference, right? Especially if we do it on back-to-back turns. So anyway, Jasmine's interesting. We'll take a look at Steelix and Skarmory later in the video. And then next up is Hiker. So I know some people have really wanted some fighting type support, and this is technically fighting support, but not in the way that I expected it to come. Hiker reads, for each of your fighting Pokemon in play, look at that many cards from the top of your deck and put them back in any order. Okay, this card is actually quite good in a sense, where it's of course not useful maybe in the early game where we don't have a lot of fighting Pokemon in play, but let's say that we do have a full board of fighting Pokemon, and that's 4 different Pokemon. That means we get to look at the top 4 cards of our deck and then put them back in any order that we want, and that is quite strong. This is going to be really decent for a variety of fighting decks that are probably combo decks like rare candy decks, or it's just in general going to be good to maybe move up like a supporter card that you want for next turn, or put a Professor's Research on the top of your deck or something like that. It's actually a really, really good consistency card for fighting decks. And we do get some new fighting type Pokemon in A4, which we'll take a look at. I actually do like Hiker. I still think that the main issue with fighting right now is the ramping and the energy problem. Fighting just doesn't really have any way to generate additional energies for fighting. I think Passimian is really the only bet here, so maybe Passimian sees more play. I don't know. But anyway, here's Hiker. We'll have to wait and see if it really kind of changes the flow for a lot of fighting type decks, but it's actually quite a strong effect. And anyway, that's all of the trainer cards, okay? So keep all of those cards in mind as we now officially move through all of the Pokemon, because now we have the context, and I think it's important before we get into the Pokemon. So anyway, next up is going to be Tangrowth. So Grass Knot, 10 damage. This attack does 40 more damage for each energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost, right? So 3 energies on a stage 1 Pokemon. It's going to be kind of tough to get Tangrowth up and running. This is a holo rare. It's a 3-diamond. I don't really think that this is going to be that good of a card, but theoretically speaking, it can do a lot of damage. There's a lot of Pokemon with 3 or 4 energy in their retreat cost. So, I mean, this hits kind of hard. I don't know. It's not something I'm super high on. We have a new Scyther for a 1 colorless energy, does 20 damage. Again, basically filler. Next up is Pinsir for 3 energies. It does 70. Again, a filler card. And now we have Chikorita, which we've seen already. And here is Bailey, 40 for 2 energies. And then next up here is Meganium, non-EX. So one spoiler I will say is that none of the starter Pokemon, Meganium, Typhlosion, or Feraligatr, have EX Pokemon in A4. And I know some people will be disappointed about that, but trust me, I believe all of the starter Pokemon will be getting EX cards eventually, probably in subsequent mini sets. But for now, in A4, none of them have EX cards. So I know that people are going to be disappointed about that. Meganium, 150, stage 2 Pokemon, 3 energies, Bloom Shine, 80 damage, heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. This card is in general not good. I mean, it could see play like with Leaf Cape and then maybe even Butterfree, and you're just doing a lot of healing all over the place. Like maybe, but I really don't think this card is that good. We have a new Ladybug here, Bug Bite, 20 damage, and then Ladian, which does 50 for 1 energy. So that is not terrible. I mean, as far as, attacks go, but we have basic Pokemon that can do 50 damage, so not a good card, really. Hop Up here, 20 damage for 1 energy. Again, more filler here. Skip Loom, 40 damage for 1 energy. Seed Bomb, more filler. But then we have Jumpluff, and this is actually a pretty interesting Pokemon here. 1 energy, 60 damage, which allows us to rare candy on our second turn and hit for 60. That's somewhat relevant. Retreat cost of 1, but it has the Fluffy Flight ability, which reads that your active Pokemon Pokemon has no retreat cost. So it's similar to Sky Support Shaman, but for not just basic Pokemon, but for all of your Pokemon. This is actually somewhat relevant. There will be decks, like double pivot decks, that actually do utilize Jumpluff. Whether or not it's worth it to play a Stage 2 Pokemon just to have free retreat, we'll have to see. Like, I don't know. Like, this could be really important in some decks, but I don't really think that this is like a super overpowered card. Again, it's hard to judge. Some decks certainly will benefit from this for sure. But all of the baby Pokemon coming in the set also have free retreats, so it's like, yeah, are we really playing Jumpluff? I mean, I don't know. Probably not. Here is Sunkern, more filler. Here is Sunflora. More filler here. There's just a lot of filler cards. There's nothing really to say about any of this stuff. We have Yanma and Yanmega, which both have two colorless energy attack costs. So this is U-turn, switch this was one of your bench Pokemon. And then Yanmega here does 60 for 2. Again, more filler cards, realistically. Here is Pineco, also a filler card. But next up is something very interesting, finally getting to an EX Pokemon, and this is Shuckle EX. So This is Shuckle EX. My opinions on this card are very mixed. I think most people will agree that this card seems very mid, but, you know, hear me out here. So Shuckle EX, basic grass, 120 HP. It has the ability Solid Shell. It takes 20 less damage from attacks. So in order to 1-hit KO Shuckle, we need to be hitting for 140, but with Leaf Cape, you actually have to hit him for 170. That's a lot. So Shuckle is living one attack for sure. And it has a single energy attack cost here, triple slap. 20 times flip 3 coins, and this attack does 20 damage for each heads. Shuckle's actually going to be a really decent strategy against aggro decks, because it is kind of an aggro deck. It's sort of an aggro Pokemon / anti-aggro card, very similar to Executor, but I don't know if it's better or worse than Executor. I know Executor is a stage 1 and not a basic, so to me it does feel like just sort of the basic version of Executor, but it's going to be really good to KO those baby Pokemon. All we have to do is flip 2 out of 3 heads and do 40 damage. It's really not a lot of damage. Like, yes, we have Will to guarantee that first coin flip, but there's too many times with Shuckle where we're just going to be doing 0 or 20 damage, and that, quite frankly, like, isn't very good. And I know that there are, I guess, some scenarios where Shuckle's going to be decent. I just don't know if I really see it. Like, there's certainly some scenarios here for Shuckle, but this Pokemon to me is just really, really interesting. It's going to be tough to build a real meta deck around Shuckle EX, but it is a very, very cool Pokemon. So anyway, shout out to Shuckle. I wish that this was like minus 40 from attacks, because minus 20 is cool, but like, it's just really not that strong. I think they overtuned or overbalanced this card, rather, because of Leaf Cape existing. They gave it only 120 HP. So anyway, there's Shuckle EX, one of the funnier cards in the set. Next up is Heracross, 90 HP, single lunge. So for 2 grass energies, 40 damage. And if this Pokemon has no damage onto it, it does 40 more damage. I know some people are going to ask, what about Berry? Because I think Berry also reduces the attack cost of Heracross, like it does Snorlax. The thing is, though, it only reduces colorless energy in your attack cost, so no, we'll not be hitting for 80 damage on turn 1 for no energies with Heracross. It doesn't work like that. It's 2 grass energies, so we have to get grass energies on Heracross to use the attack. Berry reduces the amount of colorless energy in your attack cost. So I know some people are going to be thinking that it doesn't work that way. Shout out to the Discord for figuring that out for me. Next up is Cherubi, which is a very, very interesting card, which is actually a Sweets Relay card. Not something I expected here, but what's really cool about Cherubi is 50 HP, it's a basic Pokemon, and it has the ability I'm not even going to try to say this name. The ability reads, if this Pokemon has a tool card attached, attacks used by this Pokemon cost 1 less grass energy. So yes, if we have a tool card attached to Cherubi, we can actually use Sweets Relay on turn 0 or turn 1, right? Without attaching any energies to it. That's actually a massive buff to Sweets Relay decks. I don't know if people really understand that. It's not going to be super consistent, of course. We're not always going to be leading Cherubi, and we're not always going to have tool cards, but theoretically, to get that Sweets Relay out a turn earlier is going to increase the potential damage later on by Cherubi by quite a bit. And it's only going to be 10 damage, but then it's 30 next turn, right? Which does KO a baby Pokemon. I actually like this card, and I think it's going to be pretty decent. It's going to be a fun little inclusion to Sweets Relay decks, which are probably now going to be playing grass energies. And it evolves into Cherum, which does 40 damage for 1 colorless energy. I think Cherubi's a bit more interesting than Cherum, personally. We have a new Vulpix here, Live Coal, 30 damage, and this goes into the new Ninetales, which does 120 for 3 energies, and then it can attack on your next turn. So again, something where maybe the double pivot stuff kind of helps out a little bit. However, keep in mind with Blaine, from Genetic Apex. Ninetales here is doing 150, which is a lot of damage. I don't know if it's going to be meta, but anyway, Ninetales now is like extra heavy hitting, and I think that's kind of cool. 150 is a lot of damage, enough to KO a lot of Pokemon in the game. Next up is Cyndaquil, which we've already seen, and here's the Quilava. Both have 1 energy attack costs. And then next up here is Typhlosion. This is one of the more interesting Pokemon that I think we've seen in this entire set. And it's really due to the ability, Fire Breath. Once during your turn, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. Okay, so there's certainly a lot of Pokemon in Pokemon Pocket whose attacks get boosted by damage if the opponent's Pokemon is burned, right? Those Pokemon definitely exist, and Typhlosion's going to work really well for those Pokemon and for those strategies, for sure. I kind of forget all of them off the top of my head, but not even about that. Like, the ability to just burn Pokemon is really cool. So like I'm comparing this to like Crobat, which she's playing RC stacks, and then Greninja, which is probably a bit better because it damages the bench, but it's the same similar effect where this is just a bench sitting Pokemon that's going to increase the damage we do every turn by 20, I believe it is, which is really, really impressive. Typhlosion is actually a really strong card, and it can hit for 60. So this is basically what I'm considering the Greninja of the fire Pokemon in Pokemon Pocket, which is cool that fire Pokemon now have basically a card like this, and I think that it's going to open up a lot of different strategies in the future, and I think that this is actually just a really impressive card. So that's how I'm looking at Typhlosion. It's very much like Greninja in the decks it's going to see playing. I don't know exactly which decks those are going to be, but yeah, Typhlosion is really, really, really cool. That Fire Breath ability is phenomenal. Here's Slugma. Shout out to Slugma. Next up is Magcargo, and this was teased before, and the translation now confirmed. Spurt Fire, 2 energies. One other Pokemon, either yours or your opponent's, is chosen at random 3 times. For each time a Pokemon is chosen, do 50 damage to it. So yes, you will be damaging your own Pokemon quite a bit. But if you only have Magcargo on the field, then yeah, we're doing 150 for 2 energies, and that's, I guess, kind of cool. I think Magcargo could see play with Incineroar. That's the only thing off the top of my head that gets buffed by having damage onto it already in terms of fire Pokemon. So yeah, Magcargo, Incineroar, maybe we damage Incineroar for 50 and then we come in and swing for the full 140 with Incineroar. Magcargo is interesting. I don't know if I necessarily love it, but it is going to be able to catch some strays. You know what I mean? Like, well, 50's 50. I mean, come on. That can KO some Pokemon. Here's Magby. We already knew this card existed. This is basically Pichu, which you guys have probably seen before, but this is one of the baby Pokemon that just generates energies. Magby is only for basic Pokemon and only for fire energies, and that's interesting. It does work for any basic Pokemon, but it's only fire energies. These cards, Magby and Pichu, and really all of the baby Pokemon in my mind, are actually going to really change the meta more than anything else in this set. And I'm really, really excited about it. We'll talk a lot more about Magby in future videos because it's going to see a lot of play. And again, we're going to get into deck lists tomorrow. But anyway, I think you guys already know what Magby does. These baby Pokemon are absolutely broken. Next up is Entei. Yes, another confirmation here, which I know some people are going to be disappointed about, is that Entei, Suicune, and Raikou, the 3 of the legendary dogs are not EX Pokemon in A4. And I know some people are going to be disappointed about that, but again, I literally guarantee that all 3 of these legendary dog Pokemon will be getting EX cards at some point, probably in the next mini set or the mini set after that. These cards are really interesting, and they're all meant to work with Ho-Oh. I just don't know why we would ever play these cards instead of like Lugia with Ho-Oh. But anyway, they all have high energy attack costs, but only one of like the particular energy type. So again, they're kind of meant to be played with Ho-Oh. Entei, 110 HP, strong flare, does 110 damage, and you flip a coin. If tails, discard 2 random energies from this Pokemon, which again is going to be tough on a 50-50 chance. We're not going to be able to attack turn after turn, but Ho-Oh can kind of set Entei up in one turn. It'll attach a fire, water, and electric energy, and then on our next turn, we just attach the energy manually to Entei, and then we can go ahead and hit for 110, and maybe keep hitting for 110. It's not super crazy, but technically this is a card that's meant to be played with Ho-Oh, so I think I just wanted to explain that right off the bat. By the way, here is Ho-Oh, probably the most interesting card, I think, in A4. I don't know exactly. Ho-Oh is definitely meant to be played with Lugia, but it could see play in a variety of other colorless decks. It could see play in like Arceus. The interesting thing about Ho-Oh is that we're probably going to be pairing this with Pichu or Magby to accelerate energies to it to get it set up. But then once we set up Ho-Oh, we have to go in, attack, and then set up another Pokemon, probably going to be Lugia. So I think we're going to be very reliant on things like Lyra to get Ho-Oh out of the active spot after it attacks. It's just a bit of an awkward strategy. I think it's going to be really strong against other ramp decks. but I think it will be countered pretty heavily by other Pokemon. Lugia in general is extremely strong, so we'll have to just wait and see. We'll build some decks for Ho-Oh Lugia tomorrow in tomorrow's video, but it's going to be a very interesting mechanic and archetype in Pokemon Pocket. Anyway, there's Ho-Oh. We all know about it. We are getting a Darumaka and a Darmanitan. Unfortunately, these are filler cards. They're just quite bad. 3 energy, 70 damage is horrendous. So shout out to Darmanitan. However, Ho-Oh can set this up. So shout out to him. Here is Heatmor. So this, again, does work with Typhlosion quite well. Roasted Heat. It's a basic Pokemon, 90 HP. 2 fire energies, 30 damage. Plus, if your opponent's active Pokemon is burned, this attack does 60 more damage. So 90 damage plus the burn damage, right, from Typhlosion is actually pretty decent. I actually kind of like Heatmor. You could play Typhlosion, Magby, Heatmor. It could be a really fun single prize archetype, honestly. But anyway, this card definitely is, going to go well with Typhlosion for sure. And now we're getting into the water type Pokemon. A lot of filler in here for sure. Here is a new Poliwag. Here is a new Poliwhirl, 1 energy, 30, and then here is Politoad, a very interesting Pokemon, which at first glance to me seemed really strong, but I really don't think this card is that good. Lordly Cheering is the ability here. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, attacks used by your Pokemon that evolve from Poliwhirl do 40 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Okay, sorry, I don't know why that was hard to read. So this Pokemon has to be on the bench, but if it is on the bench and you have another Pokemon that evolves from Poliwhirl in the active spot, that active Pokemon does 40 more damage. So this doesn't stack, right? Because we can only have, it does stack technically. Okay, so let's just back up here. The idea with Politoad is that we're probably playing this with Poliwrath, which is a decent card, but really not that great. It's a stage 2 Pokemon. This doesn't buff itself, so Hyper Voice isn't doing 100 unless we have a second Politoad on our bench. So I think that's the main key here. This Pokemon has to be on our bench for the Lordly Cheering effect to go into play, which means we need to have 2 of these Pokemon, or a Politoad and a Poliwrath in play, and that's just going to be kind of difficult to set up. So Politoad at first glance seemed kind of broken, but if you read a little bit closer, it's really not that strong. I don't think this card will see that much play. Here is a new Horsey card. 30 damage for 1 is not bad. Seadra, 2 energies, 50, and then yes, guys, we have Kingdra EX. For 2 water energies, we have Stormy Prison, 90 damage. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon cannot retreat. Stage 2, 170 HP, retreat cost of 1, weak to electric. So this is going to be really fun. I think that this is probably our best chance to be playing a water type stage 2 rare candy deck. We can play it with Misties. I think it's going to be okay. I think that this is going to be an okay card. 90 damage isn't that much, but it is 180 in 2 attacks, which is enough to KO most Pokemon, and we're hitting a lot of those fire Pokemon for weakness. I think that Kingdra has a lot of opportunity. In fact, I think that it would have been really good if Lyra wasn't coming out in the set, because Lyra does kind of completely counter this card, so it is tough. I don't mind Kingdra whatsoever. It's a lot of HP. We have a lot of water support. We have, just tons of different water Pokemon that we can pair with Kingdra. We've got Manaphy. We've gotten, there's a lot. There really is. So here's Kingdra EX. I think that this is a totally fine Pokemon. I don't think it's super overpowered, but I do think that it's a totally solid Pokemon. Unfortunately, Lyra is a supporter card coming out in A4, which completely counters Kingdra, which is tough because it's a switch, right? So they're not retreating when they play Lyra, they're switching. It's a different effect. But anyway, there's Kingdra, a really, really cool card. And again, I mean, 170 is a lot. We have Irida. 90 is 90. So 90 and they're not able to retreat is going to kind of change. It's going to affect some decks. It's going to be a pretty solid strategy. Unfortunately, though, these 2 energy attack costs are tough if you go first. Because we don't have a Pichu or a Magby for water type spoilers, we just don't. So we're kind of reliant on Misty to generate those energies or accelerate the pace for Kingdra. And unless we're going second, we're not going to be able to attack on our second turn, which is a little bit rough. So when we can just play something like a Charizard, it's kind of hard to justify it. We are doing 220 damage across 2 attacks against Charizard. But Charizard plays Lily, so we're just losing the Charizard matchup regardless. We can also just play Lily in Kingdra, so to be fair. But yeah, I think Charizard is just Charizard, you know what I mean? Anyway, that's Kingdra. Here's a new Magikarp, which is, I think, just worse than the other Magikarp. Still 30 HP, Splashing Dodge. This does do 10 damage. Flip a coin if heads during your opponent's next turn. Prevent all damage from and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon. I think we would just rather play the Magikarp that retreats, quite honestly. But anyway, this is the new Magikarp, which will be evolving into the new Gyarados, which is really strong. And like I said, this is a card that's meant to be played with Fishing Net and the new Fisher supporter. And I think that this is going to be actually a pretty underrated archetype. Gyarados has 130 with Cape, that's 150, and it has Wild Swing, 20 damage. You may discard any number of benched water Pokemon, and this attack does 40 damage for each benched Pokemon that you discarded this way. So if you discard a full bench of water Pokemon, we're doing 140 damage for 2 energies on a stage 1 Pokemon with 130 or 150 HP with Giant Cape. We have Fisherman to shuffle those Pokemon back into our hand, and then we have just sort of Fishing Net to just take one Pokemon back from and bring it to our hand. We also have Celestic Town Elder. So I think Gyarados is actually going to be kind of decent. I think it'll be better than what we thought it would be. And again, it makes sense because they gave us the Fisher supporter to directly be paired with Gyarados. And I think that's pretty cool. I think this probably won't be better than Silvally, but I guess it has, it can one-hit KO Silvally, right? So that's the main difference there. So yeah, Gyarados. Shout out to Gyarados here. Here's the new Totodile, which we've seen. Here is the new Croconaw, which is really cool art. And then we have the new Feraligatr, which for 2 water and 1 colorless does Destructive Whirlpool, 90 damage, and you discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. This card just won't see play. There's just not a lot of consistent ways to get 3 energies on a stage 2 Pokemon and hit for 90 damage. Like, the effect is kind of strong, but this really won't see much play. It's a little bit disappointing. The only good starter Pokemon in the set is Typhlosion. And I genuinely believe that. Okay, next up, we have Meryl here. Meryl, 10 damage, colorless. And then we have Azumarill. I was hoping for a Azumarill EX, but we do have Thick Fat, so not huge power Azumarill. Maybe it'll come in the future. But we have Thick Fat Azumarill. It takes 30 less damage from attacks from fire and water Pokemon. Tail Smack 3, energy 60. It's kind of like a smaller Mamoswine, which obviously didn't see any play. Here is the new Wooper, again, filler card. And then unfortunately, our boy Quagsire is also a filler card. 3 energies, 80, 130. I wish this card was better. I wish we had a Quagsire EX. Here's Quillfish, basic 80 HP, Poison Sting, 20 damage, and Poison. So, I mean, that is a somewhat relevant effect here. There could be a decks where it's a water energy, which is tough. It's not a very flexible card. There's probably some water Pokemon that work around poison stuff. Maybe not, actually. I don't even remember. But anyway, that's Quillfish. Here's Corsola, which has Find a Friend. So, I mean, you know, Find a Friend is relevant. Like, this is a pretty decent effect here. Corsola, of course, doesn't evolve into anything, but we do put a random Pokemon from our deck into our hand. So, I mean, I don't know. It probably won't see play, but it is a decent, of course, attack nonetheless. Remoraid, 20 damage here, and then it evolves into Octillery, which has probably one of the more interesting attack effects we have ever seen in Pokemon Pocket. So, try to rack your head around this one real quick. Octazooka, 50 damage. If the defending Pokemon tries to use an attack, your opponent flips a coin. And if they flip tails, that attack doesn't happen. This effect lasts until the defending Pokemon leaves the active spot and it doesn't stack. Okay, so basically, Octazooka, 50 damage. Our opponent has to flip a coin to attack us, but if they flip tails, not only does the attack not go through, but they are now forced to get out of the active spot because they're no longer able to attack ever, basically. Like, the effect, like, it just turns off your opponent's Pokemon until they retreat, which is hilarious. And again, we do have Will, so we can guarantee that this, actually, no, this is sorry, that's incorrect. Will works on our turn. This is going to basically force your opponent to flip heads. If not, then their active Pokemon is just dead, which is hilarious. Like, that's kind of crazy. And now it's a 50-50 for 2 energies. Like, this card probably won't see play, but this effect is ridiculous. Like, it's hilarious that you can just permanently turn off your opponent's Pokemon. They're literally forced to retreat. That's so funny to me. That is crazy. That's just a crazy effect. Like, again, it probably won't see much play, but that effect is nuts. Here is Delibird, which is just like Sigilyph from a few sets ago. 10 energy, draw a card. There's also Meowth, which does this as well. Anyway, here is Mantine, 100 HP, 4 energies, dive, 80 damage, flip a coin of heads during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon. So this is a Pokemon that we would be playing with Will to guarantee that next turn we are immune to damage, which again, I think they overtuned or rather undertuned a lot of these Pokemon that flip coins in the set because they knew that people would be playing Will. 4 energies is going to be tough to get onto Mantine, but theoretically speaking, it is possible. And then if we have Will in our hand, we can basically be immune for a couple of turns. But, you know, Sabrina exists and things like that. I don't think Mantine will be like that relevant. And again, we don't have really any water acceleration other than like Manaphy and Misty. So You know, the options are definitely a little bit limited. Here is Suicune, again, similar to Entei, so we've got 1 water and 2 colorless energy in the attack cost. Ho-Oh can set this Pokemon up in 1 turn. Cure Stream, 70 damage during your opponent's next turn. Attacks used by the defending Pokemon do 20 less damage. This card is quite honestly horrible, and it does feel kind of bad. There might be some scenarios where Suicune sees play, but to be fair, this card just really isn't good. It feels bad because all of the legendary dog Pokemon in the set, Suicune, Raikou, and Entei, are all kind of bad. So, you know, wait till we get the EX Pokemon. They'll be a lot better in the mini sets when we get the EX Pokemon. I'm very, very confident in that. Next up here, we've gotten Corphish, Vice Grip, 30 damage, and then we actually have Crawdaunt, which is an interesting Pokemon. The ability here, Unruly Claw. Once during your turn, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is guaranteed energy discard. We just have to evolve into Crawdaunt. So this is certainly like a card that could see play in other control decks, could see play like in Guzzlord, I guess, as an example, but I just don't know if it's really worth playing Crawdaunt like in these decks because, again, if we go back to Corphish, this has 1 energy in its retreat cost, and it's not a useful Pokemon in its own right. You know what I mean? So this is like one of these Pokemon that you really only play to like evolve them on your bench, and the effect is strong, but it's going to sacrifice a lot of consistency in your deck to be playing something like a Crawdaunt. But the effect here, Unruly Claw, is really interesting. Like, it's a very interesting effect. Might see play in some water decks, but overall, I don't know if it's like good enough. Okay, we'll have to see. Ducklet here, Rain Splash, 10 damage. And then we have the Swanna, which we have talked about already. This is actually somewhat relevant. This card's better than you think it is. Again, it probably won't see that much play, but it's not terrible. 2 colorless energies, which means we can play Swanna in any deck. And then basically 60 damage, and then once we get KO'd, we move all of the energies, or actually not when we get KO'd. After we attack, we move all of the energies to the bench Pokemon, which is kind of worse, right? Because if Swanna gets KO'd before we can attack, then those energies, you know, are useless to us and we've wasted them. So I don't think Swanna's like very good, but it's really not that terrible. Very interesting effect. Next up is Chinchou, Lightning Ball, 10 damage, 70 HP, which is a decent amount of HP for a basic Pokemon, and it evolves into Lanturn EX. So Lanturn, one of the few Pokemon to get an EX here in the set. 150 HP Stage 1 Lightning type Pokemon. For 3 energies, we have Flashing Signal, 80 damage, flip a coin if heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. But if tails, your opponent's active Pokemon is confused. So it's kind of a win-win. This is kind of a really strong card. Again, we have Pichu, we have Zeraora, so it's a lightning type, which gives it a ton of advantage. You can play this with Oricorio. You can play with all of the other lightning Pokemon in the game that are, again, just really, really strong. So I think this card is actually really good. With Giant Cape, we're at 170, which is just a ton of HP, and we're hitting for 80. And again, we have Will, so we can play Will and guarantee paralysis. And again, guaranteed paralysis is functionally broken. It guarantees that your opponent does nothing next turn. The only way to get around paralysis is with Lyra. And maybe Lyra does see a lot of play, but basically, or like Irida, or not Irida, but like something that I guess heals status, like I don't know, like Pokemon Center Lady. There are ways to get around it, but for the most part, if you paralyze your opponent's Pokemon, they're probably stuck doing nothing next turn, which is strong because we're probably 2 at KOing most Pokemon in the game. And I think that's certainly very, very relevant. I actually like Lanturn quite a bit. I think this is a really, really interesting Pokemon. I cannot wait to build decks around Lanturn. It's going to be a really, really fun deck to try to test out. Pleasantly surprised by Lanturn EX. I think that it's a really cool lightning type Pokemon and not something that we've really seen in the game so far. It's hilarious that we're doing 80 damage and no matter what, we're getting something out of it, whether it's paralysis or confusion. And I think that's definitely very underrated. Next up here is the Pichu. We all know and love Pichu. It's going to absolutely break lightning type decks, probably Silvally, probably Arceus. It's going to be nuts. Pichu is just a crazy, crazy card. If you don't know what it does, it's like Magby that we talked about earlier, but it generates lightning energies instead of fire. So kind of crazy. Here is Mareep with Static Shock, and here's Flaffy. I was kind of expecting Flaffy to do something, but it doesn't. It's just a throwaway card. And then Ampharos, which we've already seen. Not terrible. Again, we can set this thing up pretty easily. It can attack on your second turn going first, right, with Pichu. Thunder Punch does 80 damage. Flip a coin if heads, it does 40 more. If tails, it does 20 damage to itself. So we can guarantee to hit for 120 for 2 energies with Will, which again is kind of cool. I don't know if it's like super, super good, but definitely not terrible whatsoever. And here is Elekid, a new baby Pokemon. So we actually do have 2 baby Pokemon, which are actually aggro baby Pokemon, which is really, really funny. So Elekid's the first one we'll take a look at. 30 HP, and it does Zappy Shot. Again, free retreat, no weakness, 30 HP, lightning type. Zappy Shot for 0 energy cost, meaning we can do this on our first turn going first. This attack does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. That's actually really, really crazy. So Elekid, I know like oftentimes your opponent might not have any Pokemon on their bench, but someone did mention in the Discord earlier that in this new baby Pokemon format, a lot of people are going to have Pokemon on their bench because things like Magby and Pichu directly set up a bench Pokemon. So it's going to be pretty often that your opponent has a Pokemon on the bench. Zappy Shot's really interesting because we can basically deal some chip damage to a bench Pokemon early in the game, and that's just relevant for a variety of reasons, but also in decks that play 2 copies of Cyrus. We can basically early on target whatever Pokemon we want to bring up later in the game, and because this is damage for 0 energies, we can kind of set up a Pokemon on our bench while we're hitting with Zappy Shot. And that's, again, just very, very interesting. And I think this card is massively, massively underrated. Being able to deal damage on your first turn is pretty cool. I don't know if it's as strong as being able to generate an energy on your first turn going first. But anyway, Elekid is really, really funny. And I think it actually will see a lot of play in certain aggressive Cyrus-based decks that are going to control which Pokemon are in the active spot. And again, you can counter this with things like Potion, right? So it's going to be fairly easily counterable, but definitely a very interesting card nonetheless. Not something I expected out of baby Pokemon in the set, but there it is. There's Elekid. And here's Raikou, 90 HP here. Only 2 energy in the attack cost, so we don't need Ho-Oh for this Pokemon. And we can set this up in like 1 turn going with Pichu, right? So we can attack on our second turn going first. Thunder, 70 damage, but it does 20 to itself. So it's a basic Pokemon, and it can deal 70 damage on turn 2 very consistently, which is kind of underrated, I think. It's not like broken by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not bad at all. And the art on this card goes absolutely insane. We have a new Emolga, 70 HP. I am sweating right now. You guys can't, I don't know if you can tell, it's so hot in my office right now. It's literally 12:30 in the morning, and I'm just sweating talking about virtual Pokemon cards. Emolga, 70 HP, Raging Thunder, 40 damage. This attack also does 10 damage to one of your benched Pokemon. Not one of your opponents, one of your benched Pokemon. I don't know the applications for this, quite frankly, but interesting nonetheless. I guess it does kind of like, it plays into like the Lyra stuff, right? Like, so, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, there could be some really interesting combos with Emolga, but we'll have to wait and see. Man, okay, we got to speed it up a little bit. We got quite a few cards to go through here. Slowpoke here is kind of filler. It heals itself, kind of funny. The new Slowking here is interesting. So it's kind of like, well, okay, 2 energy, psychic, 10 damage, just 30 more for each energy in your opponent's active Pokemon, or attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. It's like Tapu Lele, or what is it? Like Alakazam, I think is something like this, but it's just in general kind of weak. So there is Slowking. And another baby Pokemon is Smoochum. This is probably, in my mind, the worst baby Pokemon. I'll just come out and say it. It has the, the Shivery Wave attack, no energy in the attack cost. It does 20 damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So sure, like Smoochum is fine, right? But again, like in terms of like a revenge attacker, it just doesn't make that much sense, right? So like you would think, okay, Smoochum's not bad, right? You can kind of bring it in and then you can deal, whatever, I guess 60 or 80 damage maybe in the late game to a Pokemon for 0 energy cost. But again, if you're like a revenge attacker and you're bringing in Smoochum to finish off a KO, like wouldn't you rather just play a Pokemon that you can attach an energy to? Because we have an energy to attach this turn anyway. I guess the relevancy for Smoochum maybe is going to be sort of those anti-ramp decks, right? But most of those decks are just attaching to their bench Pokemon. So in the scenario of Smoochum, it's going to be pretty funny if your opponent is forced to just attach to their active Pokemon. And then we can just sort of start attacking from like the first turn. But again, the upside to baby Pokemon is that we can attack on our first turn going first, which means our opponent's not going to have any energies on their active Pokemon. And again, this is doing 0 damage to other baby Pokemon. I think Smoochum is interesting. I just don't think that it's that good, especially when you compare it to the other baby Pokemon. It's a very, very interesting card, but I would expect this to probably see the least amount of play out of any of the baby Pokemon coming in the set. Anyway, that is Smoochum. And then we have Jinx, which doesn't evolve from Smoochum. This is just a basic Pokemon. Attract, Smack, 30 damage, flip a coin. If has your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So again, something we would play for with Will to guarantee paralysis. Still probably not that good. Here's Cleffa, a drastic difference from Cleffa. or from Smoochum here. Cleffa's really good. Put a random Pokemon from your deck into your hand. I actually just think Cleffa's going to replace Shiinotic in any deck that was playing Shiinotic before. I think that it's going to be really good in just a ton of different decks. I think Cleffa is really, really useful. I know some people are on the fence about baby Pokemon in general, but again, I think that this is just really, really strong. It's going to be really good for those decks that want a rare candy turn 2. Cleffa is perfect for that. Just a really, really strong card. It's going to be mostly used for evolution decks or evolution Pokemon decks. I really love Cleffa. I think it's probably one of the better baby Pokemon that we've gotten. Here's Togepi, not a baby Pokemon. We've already seen the art rare version of this. Kind of a filler card, to be fair. Here's the new Togetic card, also a filler card, but the new Togekiss is somewhat interesting. The ability here, Celestial Blessing. If any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin. If heads, prevent that damage, right? So you might think, okay, this is broken with Will, right? No, because the coin flip works on your opponent's turn. So it doesn't work like that with Will. Will is only during your turn and the turn that you play Will, so it doesn't work with Togekiss. Cynthia will work, so we can hit for 120 for 3 energies with Cynthia, and then half the time we're taking no damage. It could actually be somewhat relevant, and we have 2 colorless energies in the attack cost, so I mean that is also a pretty big deal. We can't actually just play like baby Pokemon in a Psychic deck and get this set up pretty quick with Rare Candy. It's really not a bad Pokemon. I think that this actually does have the opportunity to see play, but it won't work with Will, and that's just the one point that I wanted to get across here. I think that this Togekiss is totally fine. I think it's a generally a really decent Pokemon, but I don't think it's like super overpowered or anything like that. Here is Natu, nothing surprising here. But then we have Xatu. This is a card that I think a lot of people might freak out about. 80 HP here, retreat cost of 1 Psychic type. 2 Psychic energies, Leaf Drain, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon's remaining HP is now 10. So yes, this is going to be definitely a really strong card with Will. Basically, if you play Will on the turn you attack with Xatu, you're guaranteed to drop your opponent's Pokemon down to 10 HP. And then clearly, yes, we can play, Poison Barb, or we can play Rocky Helmet. And basically, we put our opponent in a position to where they're going to get basically one-hit by Xatu. And that's pretty cool. But again, Guzma does exist. And the downside to Xatu is that this doesn't do any damage. So your opponent, like, the funny thing about this card, because it seems broken, but the funny thing about this is that your opponent will literally, or you'll never ever be able to KO your opponent with Xatu. You have to play another Pokemon that actually deals damage, or you'll have to like get attacked while having Poison Barb or Rocky Helmet. But again, Guzma exists and your opponent can just not attack. So it's kind of funny. This is certainly going to be a very interesting strategy with Will, and a very interesting card in general, the Will supporter. But I just don't, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. It's really, really crazy. I just don't know if it's gonna be like good enough. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Like, it's crazy, but who knows? Here is Espeon in its full glory here. We've already talked about it. Heal 30 from one of your Pokemon. Psybolt 80 damage. Next up are 2 very interesting cards. We have 2 new unknown cards, which have unique abilities that work in conjunction with each other. The first one here is going to be the Guard Unknown. This ability works if you have any unknown in play with an ability other than Guard. All of your Pokemon take minus 10 damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. Now, this does technically stack, right? So we could, if we have 2 Guard Unknown on our bench and then 1 non-Guard Unknown on our bench, then our opponent takes, or we take 20 less damage every time our opponent attacks. And then we have the Power Unknown, which is a little bit more impressive, right? So if this ability works, again, if you have any unknown in play with an ability other than Power, attacks used by your Pokemon do 10 plus damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you have one of the Power Unknown and one of the Guard Unknown on your bench, then yes, we are doing plus 10 and minus 10 to our active Pokemon. And that's kind of cool, but it's awkward because neither of these Pokemon do anything unless you have the other one also on your bench, which is really awkward because we're kind of forced to have 2 Pokemon on our bench to have a pretty okay ability, but nothing like too crazy. So, these are really interesting cards, but I don't know if again, they're going to be really good enough to see that much play. Wobbuffet has the Reply Strongly attack for 2 energies here, 30 damage if this Pokemon was damaged by an attack during your opponent's last turn while it was in the active spot. This attack does 50 more damage. Very restricting here, 90 HP. It's not very likely, like this is going to be a really good card to counter Oricorio. They're going to hit you and then you want to KO them back. Other than that, I don't really think Wobbuffet's going to see that much play. Girafarig, 3 energy, Psybeam 50, and Confusion. Kind of a filler card here. Snubble, Ram for 20, and then we have Granbull here, 120, Wild Tackle, 100 damage, and then you do 20 damage to yourself. Excuse me. Also a filler card in my mind. There's definitely going to be a lot of those. There always is. People are going to look at the new sets and say, oh, that's kind of underwhelming. Listen, like every single expansion has the majority of their cards to be filler cards, and then there's like you know, 10% of those cards that are meta. And I think that the meta cards in A4 are extremely strong. I'll talk about my full opinions later in the video. And here is Musharna. My theory, by the way, the next set, full set, A5, is going to be Generation 5. It'll be Unova. That's my theory. A ton of Generation 5 Unova Pokemon are in A4. Dream Dance, 60 damage. Both active Pokemon are asleep. Okay. Kind of a filler card. Next up, we're going to get into the fighting cards. There's a lot of really interesting fighting cards. We have to move quickly, man. This is a long video. Here is Onix. 3 energies, 50 damage, and this evolves into a Steelix. It's not Steelix EX. We'll take a look at it later. A new Sudowoodo. 2 fighting energies, does 50. Objectively worse probably than the other Sudowoodo. Gligar here, 10 damage. It evolves into Gliscor here. 60 damage for 2 colorless. That's somewhat interesting, but nothing too crazy. We are KOing Oricorio. Here is a new Swinub, a fighting type Swinub, a fighting type Piloswine, and then a fighting type Mamoswine, which is actually a really strong Pokemon here. 4 fighting energies, does 160. This attack does 20 damage to each of your benched Pokemon. You might be wondering, how are we going to get 4 energies on a Mamoswine? You're probably not. That's probably why Mamoswine won't see play. But you know, shout out to the Discord and the people who want to play Passimian Mamoswine. Best of luck to you. That's all I really have to say about that. Here is Fanpy, is how you say this card, I believe. 70 damage, Reckless Charge, does 30 damage, and then does 10 damage to itself. And it evolves into one of my personal favorites, Donphan EX, 160 HP stage 1 Pokemon, Gigantic Press, 50 damage, but if this Pokemon has at least 2 extra fighting energy attached, it does 60 more. So for 1 energy, we do 50, and that's actually, again, fairly relevant, and if we have 3 energies, we do 110. So this is basically the direct fighting type counterpart to Executor EX and then Crabominable EX. So this is like the fighting type cousin of those cards. Neither of those cards see play in the current metagame, but I do think Donphan is actually a fairly interesting card. Again, we don't have any way to generate fighting energies or accelerate fighting energies, which kind of feels a little bit bad, but I actually really like this effect. I think that Donphan doing 50 early on is pretty relevant. I think that it's actually a decent Pokemon. Again, we'll have to see if it sees play, but maybe we play Hiker, right? Maybe we play like Donphan Hiker, right? And we were actually really consistent off the top deck. Anyway, there's Donphan EX. Again, very similar to Executor and Crabominable EX. And now we have the fighting type version of it. I guess maybe like Weavile would be the dark version of it. I don't really know. Tyrogue is another baby Pokemon, which again is kind of the direct partner to Elekid. So this simply reads Slappy Knuckle, 0 energy cost, and we deal 20 damage. You might be wondering, why would anyone ever play this card, right? Because at first glance, it seems just really like non-obvious why this card would ever be good. 20 damage on your first turn going first is cool, but like why, right? It's not KOing anything. It's not like super relevant. I think in general, this card is actually a lot better than people think it is. 20 damage is 20 damage, and that extends to subsequent turns if this Pokemon doesn't get KO'd. I think a lot of people are assuming that baby Pokemon are just going to get KO'd on your opponent's first turn, but that's not always going to be the case, which does allow this Pokemon to deal 20, 40, maybe even 60 damage without ever having to attach an energy to it, which means by the time we bring in a Pokemon on our bench, yeah, like that Pokemon is probably going to be able to KO whatever's in the active spot. And that's honestly really relevant. The other thing to keep in mind here with Tyrogue is that it does 20, but with Giovanni, that's 30. And that's KOing every other baby Pokemon in the game, unless they have Giant Cape attached. But again, all baby Pokemon can attach Giant Cape. I actually really like Tyrogue. No weakness, no retreat, no energy cost, just 20 free damage. And I think that's kind of relevant. I'll be honest with you. We're also doing 40 to Oricorio. So if your opponent leads Oricorio, on our first turn going first, we deal 40. And then again, on their first turn, they can't attack us because Oricorio has 2 energies in their attack cost. And then bang, we just go ahead and then KO their Oricorio. And if they lead Pichu, that's fine. We just Giovanni KO Pichu. So we're not hitting for weakness on any baby Pokemon because baby Pokemon don't have weakness. But there's going to be a lot of lightning Pokemon in the active spot. Things like Oricorio, Zeraora that are going to be hit for weakness on Tyrogue. Also, all of those normal type Pokemon. I actually really like Tyrogue, and I think that it's going to see a lot of play. It's sort of the anti-baby Pokemon, which I think is kind of cool. Not something I expected from any of these baby Pokemon, but cards like this are going to be a lot better, I think, than people might assume. That's my assumption. Again, I could be wrong. Here's Hitmontop. So again, the counterpart to Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. We have Piercing Spin, does 20 to the active and 20 to the bench for 1 energy. Again, with Giovanni, we will be KOing a baby Pokemon while tagging the bench for 20 damage. I think this is actually a pretty decent Pokemon. A lot of opportunity for Hitmontop for sure. And yes, EX, we do have fighting type Larvitar. So Tyranitar is in the set, but unfortunately, it's not fighting type, or fortunately, however you think about it. Larvitar here is fighting, does 10 damage, and then Pupitar here, 20 damage, and then minus 30 guard press for 2 colorless energies. And then Tyranitar is a dark Pokemon. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. And then we have Binacle? I don't know how to say this Pokemon's name. Dual Chop, 30 damage, flip 2 coins, 30 for each heads, 2 energies, and it evolves into Barbaracle. 3 energy, 70. So more filler Pokemon there. Here we have a new Zubat, Venomous Fang, 10 damage plus poison. We have a new Golbat, 70 HP, Venomous Fang, again, 20 damage plus poison. And then we have Crobat EX. Yes, guys, we have Crobat EX. It's funny because Crobat EX was leaked, and I did post this on the community page, but I told people, I was like, listen, this is probably not a real card. But Crobat EX was real. It's just not, it's a different one. So this card, again, it seems really simple, but do not underrate Crobat EX. 170 HP on a stage 2 Pokemon with 1 energy in the attack cost, 70 damage plus poison. So again, we have Nihilego, right, to increase poison. So, you know, I look at Crobat and I think to myself, okay, what if I go first and on my second turn I rare candy in a Crobat and I start swinging for 70? What are people realistically gonna do? The fun thing about Crobat is that we also have the Dark Pendant, and like I said, we have Nihilego to boost the damage from poison. You know, Crobat could end up just kind of smacking for 100 plus damage, plus having the Dark Pendant, plus being super aggro. This is going to be one of the most frustrating Pokemon to play against, because the times where your opponent gets this thing out immediately is going to be super, super annoying. With Dark Pendant, we also have Cleffa that we can play with Crobat, and then just immediately, you know, be very consistent off the jump. I really do love Crobat EX, and I think it's actually going to be probably one of the better Pokemon to come out in A4, which is very interesting. These Dark-type Pokemon are crazy. This is really strong. This is just a generically strong Pokemon. And because it's 1 energy, like we can maybe pair this with like another basic dark Pokemon like Darkrai and just attach those subsequent energies to Darkrai, right? It's really strong. Crobat's a really strong Pokemon. I really, really like it. Spinarak, 60 HP, pierce 20 damage. And then we have Ariados, which does 40 for 1 energy. Stage 1 Pokemon. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. It's whatever. And then here's Umbreon. I know everybody was really hyped about Umbreon. We do have Dark Pendant. I think that this is going to be a decent card. I don't know how to, like, because it has to be in the active spot, it means that Umbreon's not going to really work as like a supportive Pokemon. It really is sort of this all-in-one Pokemon that's going to be taking KOs while bringing Pokemon up like with its Cyrus ability with Dark Chase. And that's what the ability is. It's literally Cyrus. So I think Umbreon's okay. We'll try to build some decks with it, but I'm not super confident that it's going to be like a crazy good Pokemon. We'll have to just kind of wait and see. This Murkrow is very interesting. So Astonish, 1 fighting energy, flip a coin if heads. Again, will does exist. Your opponent reveals a random card from their hand and shuffles it into their deck. So yeah, I mean, guaranteed disruption here with Will and Murkrow. Even not with Will, it's actually kind of strong, and I actually think Murkrow is a totally respectable Pokemon, I'm not going to lie. It evolves into Honchkrow, which does 60 for 2 energies. Much less impressive than Murkrow, to be honest with you, but it is there. Here is Sneasel. Now, we do already have Weavile EX, but anyway, here's Sneasel, 20 damage for 1 dark energy. And then we have a non-EX Weavile, which does 50. And then now we have Houndour, which does bite for 40 for 2 energies. And then it evolves into Houndoom. We've actually already seen this card before. Houndoom, 70 damage, discard a random card from your opponent's hand. This isn't shuffle it back into the deck. This is discard. How are you going to get dark energies on Houndoom? It's not going to be easy, I'll tell you that much. That's probably the main reason why Houndoom will not be a meta card per se. Now, here is the big boy here, Tyranitar himself. I was hoping we would get Tyranitar EX, but that's beside the point. Stage 2, Dark Pokemon, 160 HP. It has the ability Energy Plunder. Once during your turn, you may move all dark energies from each of your Pokemon to this Pokemon. So, I mean, there you go. I think that Tyranitar is going to be really, really interesting. I think that it's a lot better than, again, it may look at first glance. We have things like Darkrai and Giratina. Darkrai in general, we just have Pokemon that can kind of just be in the active spot while we attach to Darkrai, deal a bunch of chip damage. And then, yeah, we can kind of just choose to move all of those energies that we've been accumulating over the last few turns to Tyranitar and then just start swinging for 130. I actually really think Tyranitar is an interesting Pokemon. I don't know if it's going to be super strong or like super meta, but I mean 130 is 130, right? And anything with like energy conservation or anything like that is actually pretty impressive. We'll have to see. This is definitely a somewhat impressive Pokemon, and I think we have to look out for it. And next up is Absol, and this is literally Hitmonlee, but Dark type. So there you go. We get it. It's got 80 HP at least. Weak 2 Grass, retreat cost of 1, Leap over 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Like I said, it's literally Hitmonlee, but it's Absol. It's a dark type Pokemon. And I think that's kind of cool, I'll be honest with you. Okay, now on to the metal type Pokemon. We have Fortress, 80, this is a filler card. Then we have Steelix. So Steelix does work with the new Jasmine supporter card. 110 damage for 1 metal and then 3 colorless. So yes, Ho-Oh, I guess, can set up Steelix. One thing that I know people are already commenting. I know right now, somebody's already in the comments, their fingers are flying. They're like, what about Brock? Like, we can just Brock to Onix and then evolve Steelix. Like, yes, 100%. Like, you are right, commenter, who probably got that comment out even before I was able to say it in the video. Yes, that technically does exist. And then again, we do have the new Jasmine card. I forget. We have the new supporter card, which minuses damage done to this Pokemon by, of course, 50. And then we have the new tool card for Steel Pokemon. So, there is a world where Steelix sees play. Do I think it will see play? I mean, probably not. But the 3 colorless energies is interesting. I mean, we could even use a baby Pokemon to set this thing up. So I think that's kind of cool. Honestly, I think it's not a terrible Pokemon. We also have Scizor, rather, which evolves from Scyther. Not an EX Pokemon. Gale Thrust, 50 damage. If this Pokemon moved from your bench to the active spot this turn, it does 50 more damage. So, again, it kind of makes sense, right, with some baby Pokemon, right? So, I mean, like, you can just sort of set this thing up fairly easily and then come in hit for 100. I mean, that's not terrible, I'll be honest with you. It's not incredible, but it's not terrible. Next up here is Skarmory EX. Skarmory is getting an EX card. This card is very, very interesting. Again, we have that new tool card. We have the new supporter card. Basic 140 HP steel Pokemon. Retreat cost of 2, weak to fire. Steel Wing for 2 metal energies. 70 damage. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes minus 20 from attacks. At first glance, I actually really liked this Pokemon with all of the new metal type support, but then it dawned on me that there's no way to cheat out that metal type energy onto Skarmory. Like, there's literally no Pokemon that do that other than Dialga, which is bad. So why, like, the issue with Skarmory is when we go first, right? If you go first, we can't attack with Skarmory, until our 3rd turn. And that's bad because this to me does feel like an aggressive Pokemon, but it's not. It's more of like a tempo-based Pokemon that's just a little bit underwhelming. So at first glance, like, I just don't know if Skarmory is going to be very good. I'll just say it straight up. This card to me is super hype at initial glance, but I really just don't think it'll see much play because, again, what are we doing if we go first? We just can't get any steel energies out like that turn. Maybe in a future set, Skarmory will be really good if we get some metal energy support, but for now, I just really don't love Skarmory, and I just don't think it's going to be that good. Again, we'll have to see. Maybe it doesn't matter, right? Maybe with the new supporter card and the tool card, Skarmory can just stay alive for a long time. It's also a basic Pokemon, so, like, maybe we play Elekid, maybe we play Tyrogue, who knows? You know what I mean? We'll have to see, but either way, unfortunate for sure to be a steel Pokemon with 2 metal energies in your attack cost. We do have a Mawile. It's a filler card. There it is. We have a new Clink, and we have a new Clang, and then, of course, we have a new Cling Clang. So Clink Clang here, 150 HP, Gear Spinner, 70 damage for 3 metal energies during your next turn. This Pokemon's Gear Spinner does 70 more damage, so 70 plus 140 is 210. We are getting 2 KOs with Clink Clang. It's 3 energies. Like, what are we doing with that? You know what I mean? Spearow, Colorless Glide, 10 damage, and we have Fearow. Peck Bugs is the attack name here. A very weird card. 30 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a grass Pokemon, we actually hit for 70. So, I mean, sure. If you really hate grass Pokemon, you can play Fearow here. Chansey, 100 HP. It has the Scrunch attack, whatever that means, for 2 colorless energies. Flip a coin if heads. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks. So yes, we have a nice colorless Pokemon that can basically stall with will. It's kind of just a wall. That's all this Pokemon really does. It's just nothing but not die sometimes. And I don't know exactly what that means. But anyway, we do have Blissey, which does deal damage. 150 HP stage 1, Pokemon 3, colorless energy in the attack cost, energy blow, 20 damage. This attack does 20 more energy for each energy attached to this Pokemon. All right, it's all making sense now. Okay, we stall with Chansey, we pile up energies, we go into Blissey, and then we sweep, right? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be awesome. It's probably not going to work out that well. We're probably going to want to set up Blissey on the bench. Yes, we can use Ho-Oh and just pile energies on Blissey and then come in and smack. But listen, we're not playing Blissey Ho-Oh, okay? Don't get your hopes up. We're playing Blissey, or we're not. No, we're playing Ho-Oh Lugia, to be fair. It's a funny Pokemon, to be honest with you. And it could work with baby Pokemon in general. I mean, if you get 3 energies onto this thing, which you have to attack, we're doing 80. So, I mean, 80 is 80, right? I don't know. That's enough about that. We have a new Kangaskhan, another holo here, 100 HP, cross cut, 20 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon, we do 60 damage. So unfortunately with Kangaskhan, if this was 30 and 30, this would be very good, but it's not. It's 20 and 40, so unfortunately, we're not KOing baby Pokemon. I don't think this Kangaskhan will see that much play, personally. We do have a new EV, which is probably going to be the best EV that we have, because if you are playing Sylveon decks, you play the EV that draws a card, but this EV here is Find a Friend, which means instead of drawing a card, you draw a random Pokemon. And the reason why I think this is better is because let's just say we're playing Charizard Sylveon as an example. We have a pretty high chance of pulling either Charizard or Sylveon from our deck with Find a Friend, and to me that's very good because those are two Pokemon that we want to be drawing when we're playing Charizard. So I think that this is actually going to be the new EV that replaces the other EV that we're playing in Sylveon decks specifically. I think the math works out. It's just going to be more consistent than the draw card EV. We have a new Porygon, and then we have a new Porygon 2, which we have already talked about, Buggy Evolution. This is going to allow us to basically skip being a Stage 1 Pokemon. It's cool. It's like playing Rare Candy, but you're not actually playing Rare Candy. Whenever you attach an energy card from your energy zone to this Pokemon, put a random card from your deck that evolves from this Pokemon onto this Pokemon to evolve it. So yes, it's basically like, you know, we can just immediately skip to Porygon Z, which is pretty cool. And we have a new Porygon Z, which is basically like Stoutland, but maybe a little bit worse, but it's more consistent to get into, and we don't need Rare Candy, which is pretty cool. We have Sentret here, 20 damage, Scratch, and then we have Furret here. Tail Smash does 80 damage. Flip a coin of heads, it does nothing. So again, I mean, we could be hitting for 80 with Will guaranteed on our second turn going first. So, I mean, that's not terrible. It's something for sure. Hoot Hoot, it could not be asleep. So it's just up all the time with insomnia. And it evolves into Noctowl, which also has a very interesting effect. I think this is another Will synergy Pokemon here. Fly, 3 colorless energy, 90 damage. Flip a coin. If tails, this attack does nothing. If heads, during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage from and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon. There's a lot of these cards that are supposed to synergize with Will, but I don't really feel too strongly about any of them, if I'm being entirely honest with you. Like, the best one was, like, are probably, like, the older cards, like Alolan Executor or Guzzlord, honestly. But anyway, we have Noctowl. And we have a new Apom as well, which has the Imitate attack. Draw cards until you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. Okay, well, hold on a second. So we could basically end our turn drawing a bunch of cards, which is pretty cool. Like, oftentimes your opponent after their first turn has still like 4 or 5 cards in their hand. So if we're going second on our first turn, we could play all of the cards from our hand, burn our hand down to like 0 cards maybe, and then play and use Imitate, and then we draw 5. Like, that's actually kind of strong. I think this card is actually pretty decent. Will it see play? I don't know. It's like Chatot, but maybe a little bit better than Chatot because it just draws. It doesn't shuffle or you don't put your hand back into your deck and then draw cards. I like Apom, I do. Ambipom is filler, does 40 damage. We have Dunsparce, which does 20, and then flip a coin if heads, it's paralysis. So yes, we could go turn 1 guaranteed paralysis with Dunsparce and 20 damage with Will. And maybe we do, but we probably won't. I'll be honest with you. It's funny, it's niche, but it's like, it's kind of meme. It's a little bit meme for sure. Teddy Ursa here, 60 HP, Honey Snack rather, doesn't even do damage. It just heals 20 from the Pokemon. It evolves into Ursaring, 120 HP, colorless stage 1 Pokemon, 3 colorless energies, swing around, 60 plus, flip 2 coins. This attack does 20 more damage for each heads. So, I mean, yeah, theoretically speaking, we could play Will and guarantee to do 80, and then 50% of the time we do 100. It's really not good. It's not a card I would really choose to play personally. That's just my opinion. We do have a new Stantler, Enhanced Horns, 20 damage. If this Pokemon has a tool attached, it does 50 more. So this is similar to like Skarmory, which does 50 if it has a tool card, but for 2 colorless, we do 70 if we have a tool card attached. And that's, I mean, it's not bad, honestly. It's probably just better. Maybe not. It's interesting for sure. Well, actually, if we go back, it's, again, 20 and then 50. Like, they did that on purpose, so, like, this thing is not KOing a baby Pokemon if you don't have a tool card, which is, again, kind of sad. Next up, we've gotten Smeargle, which is a very, very interesting Pokemon. 70 HP, 2 colorless energy, Splatter Coating, does 50 damage, and then you change the type of a random energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon to one of the following at random. So it's really funny. Like, you can basically turn all of your opponent's energies into useless energies and just hit them for 50. Like, this could be a really overpowered Pokemon, especially with one of the baby Pokemon. We could basically set this thing up on our second turn and just start doing that. So it's one of these cards that is really disruptive to your opponent's active Pokemon, but unfortunately, they can just attach to the bench Pokemon, right? Which, it kind of makes Smeargle useless. But anyway, it's interesting and it's kind of strong to some degree. We've got our main man Lugia here. We will be building some decks with Lugia. Fire, Water, Lightning, 180. Discard all of those energies from Lugia. 180 is 180, you know, and energy or damage rather is king. This card would see 0 play if Ho-Oh didn't exist and an elemental switch, but those cards do exist now in A4, and maybe Lugia will also see play. We'll have to build some decks with it tomorrow. I'm really interested to do that. Lastly, we've gotten Bouffalant randomly here. Continuous headbutt, 70 damage, flip a coin until you get tails. Does 70 damage for each heads. For 3 colorless energies with will, we're guaranteed to do 70, and then a 50% chance to do 140, and then what is it, like a 25% chance or a 33% chance to do, what is it? I can't do math, 210? So, I mean, you know what? It could be fun, actually. Could be a fun Pokemon, but anyway, probably not that strong. And we have all of these alternate art cards, which again, you know, I could show, like, here's like the immersive Lugia. I don't have the video, that's the image. Do I have any of the other ones? I guess, yeah, I have the immersive Ho-Oh here. Looks really, really cool for sure. Yeah, I'm not gonna go through them. This is already an hour and 10 minutes, so we're just gonna wrap it up, guys. The set comes out, the official set releases on the 30th, and it's actually the 29th now because it's 1 a.m. as I am wrapping up this video. Tonight, actually, technically, yeah, tonight I will be going live on YouTube for the set release. So I'll be going live sometime around like midnight tonight, and then the set should release at 2 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll be live for a little bit. We'll kind of theory craft some decks, and then once the set does release when we're live, we'll do a pack opening, and then we'll of course, you know, maybe build some decks or something in the live stream. It'll be fun. So stick around. Tuesday night, tonight probably, as you're watching this video, I will be going live on YouTube. So definitely, if you have the time, come and hang out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, I am very, very tired, so I'm going to wrap up this video. I'm going to go upload, and I'm going to edit this and get this to you guys as early as possible. Hopefully you guys appreciate it. Don't forget to like the channel, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, guys. We're almost at 30,000, and I really do appreciate it. I need to get some sleep. So anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Hour and 10 minutes. It is what it is. You know, some people like the long videos. I am sweating right now. It's so hot in my office. Anyway, guys, peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.